Alright, so first things first, the first thing I did with this beat was I actually started with a drum loop. And so whenever I'm having a hard time finding inspiration, or I just want to make like a certain sound, or just make something very different what I've been doing, I'll go and I'll just find anything I'll splice. Don't even have to be on Splice. Sometimes off YouTube, sometimes I'll Splice. Sometimes I'll just scroll through Spotify till I hear inspiration. But I'll just wait and I'll listen till I hear inspiration to hit. And in this one, the form it came in was just this cool little drum loop. And so what it sounds like dry, like without me doing nothing to it, was this. So I heard that and immediately it was like, okay, R&B, like I can do something with that. And so what I did was I brought it into here, slowed it down just a little bit, not a little bit, I slowed it down like a lot bit. And I kind of heard this part right here. I heard like a reversal in it. I was like, okay, like that was probably a really bad like impersonation of what it was sounding like in my head, but like I heard it. So I did that. I chopped this up, reversed this part right here, and then after that I was like, okay, like I still want it to be a little bit more different. Like it's a very standard mixed drum loop. Like I wanted it to have like its own unique flair to it. So I routed it to a mixer track, and what I did was add a reverb. And reverb, a lot of the times people don't be like putting too much reverb on their drums, which is cool. I typically agree with that. But whenever you're making like all R&B and like the Weeknd style stuff, even like Travis Scott type stuff, just that really like synthy ambient sound, reverb kind of, all those like rules about not too much reverb kind of fly out the window. Like you can kind of overdo it and it still sounds good. So put a good amount of reverb on my drums. I use this cool Looperator preset, and this is something I do for a lot of drum patterns, or really hi-hat patterns, drum patterns, whatever. If I want to add something cool to it, I use Looperator. You can use Effectrix, you can use whatever. Just something that's gonna like add effects to moments, which is cool. Like that gives it like a lot of like cool flair to it. So I just found like a random Looperator preset, and I like just turning the wet down just to make it kind of more subtle, but like have that uniqueness to it. And the last thing I did was at a RC20, and this is just because I wanted it to sound more dark, I guess. Like it was a really bright drum sounding shit like loop, and I wanted my melody to be the bright part of the beat. My melody, my vocals that I was gonna add in the back later. Like I knew I wanted other parts to like cut through the mix. So I made the drums a little bit darker by adding some RC20. And then once I did all that, the drum loop came out to start sounded like this. Let me undo the automation. Here we go. And that's that. Once I had that, I was like, okay, like this gonna be easy. Like that was just a really good foundation for making a beat around. Like it just had such a unique bounce to it already. And so the next thing I did was like, okay, I need some chords. And for this part, what I was thinking in my head was like, I really want to go crazy on the bass line. I'm gonna add more drums, even if I already have like a drum loop going. Like I want more drums, I want more variation to it. So I knew the drums were gonna be crazy. I knew the bass line was gonna be crazy. So I was like, okay, like the one thing I can relax on is just the chords and the melody. Like I don't need anything going too stupid. So I just played in these really simple chords on Analog Lab, just some random R&B preset. And it's essentially, so I played it in E minor, so I'll pull it right down here. It's really simple. It's just a triad right here. So I just got the first, minor third, and then the fifth right here. Got the root, another triad right here. This is the minor fifth. And then you come back up, and right here I played the fourth. Yeah, the fourth. So typically you'd play that right here, but I didn't want to go that low, so I moved it all the way up here by doing some cool inversions. So then I got the minor 1, minor 5, minor 4. I've used all minor chords so far. And then I come back to this fifth right here, and I just literally all I did was I wanted to play this one higher just because I didn't want to come all the way back down here. So I literally inverted this once, inverted it twice, and that's how I got that last chord right there on the far right. And like I said, chord progression was really simple, nothing crazy at all. That was it. And then I pitched it back up. I pitched it up afterwards just because I like the sound of that more. So that was like my chords right there. And then once I had that, so I had this going on for me. Really solid bass. And so I was like, okay, Next thing I'm gonna do is finish up those drums, and so I just came in, added some really simple stuff. Like I did not overdo it right here. I added a hi-hat, so I'll just play it with the other drum loop right now. Just add like a more consistent bounce in there since I got the looperator and I chopped up the first drum loop. It's just a simple bounce to that hi-hat. Then I added an open hat. Simple, nothing crazy, and that repeats too. Then I added like a little like perk shot snare thing. Loops. One thing I've been learning to do more, you'll notice in this drum pattern, is that like repetition in drums is good. Like you can really go out of your way to like try and do some stupid stuff, some crazy stuff, but like, and that's good. Like if you want to do that, like I'm not knocking that. I do that sometimes, but like the thing that I've been listening to a lot of Daft Punk actually recently, Daft Punk and K Tronada, and it's kind of taught me like repetition is good. Even if you're gonna do a lot of crazy stuff, even if you're gonna have like a really long song, you want repetition in there because like it's an element in dance music that you want people to be able to move to your music and understand like the rhythm. And even if they can't understand like the crazy inner workings of the polyrhythms and shit you got going on, like if they can nod their heads to it because there's a consistent groove they can find in it, that's good. And so that's an element I've been trying to put more in my music. You'll see it in trap, you'll see it in Pierre Bourne does that shit a lot too. It's a common thing to loop stuff, but like just the simplicity of taking something that may not be so simple and then just looping it over and over again to make it like user friendly almost in a sense, make it like easy in the ears, make it easy in the brain. That's like a concept I think that you should be very like actively thinking about whenever you're doing your drums. There's a time and a place for it. Like I said, you can do crazy shit, you can mix shit up, but just keep that in your mind whenever you are making a beat. And so after that, we kind of got this going on right here. Good ground bass, but obviously we're missing a lot of shit. It sounds really empty. And first thing, obviously, to fix that is we're gonna add the bass in. And then for the bass line, I knew I wanted a synth bass. And the adjective, I was thinking about it when I was thinking about how I'm gonna record this video, but the adjective to describe the synth bass you want for an R&B beat like this is you want it to drive. Like you don't want it, you want it to cut through the mix, you want it to drive through the mix. You don't want it to punch, you want it to drive through the mix. And so I use this. That is arcade. I used this synth bass right here called Astro Freeze. It's from some user bank in Analog Lab, and literally just followed the root notes. And the whole thought process behind this one, I played it on my MIDI, but the whole thought process behind this one was follow the roots, add these cool runs in between it, and then don't be afraid of leaving some space in between your shit. Like let like the bass cut off so when it comes back in, like the absence of noise is just as important as having noise in some spots. Like really think that through. Like whenever you don't have noise in, that makes you appreciate the spots that you do have this shit going on more. And so that was a whole thing too. So like I said, I just added these couple runs in between them, and then the only run that was kind of different was this one because it was a triplet. And so I'll just play that through for y'all right now. Let me unmute the bass. There we go. And just so y'all can see the MIDI as it plays through. And that's the bass line. I really was going to use this expensive ass synth I bought and play it on here, but I really wanted that like elite quantization, like I said, because I was doing really attention to detail stuff about letting there be intentional gaps there. So I wanted everything to be on time, and so that's why I didn't use this. But that just goes to show you, you don't need this shit. You can do it without it. Like I love this. If you want to go down that route of getting analog gear, like I fully support it. But like there's no excuses. Like if this is all you got to work with, you're gonna make it work. But after the bass line, I had this going on for me right here. Still good, but I wanted a little bit more melody, and so I knew some vocal chops were gonna sound good in here. And so this first one right here, it's from Distant Voices. It's called Mirror, and it's almost more just like a pad. Like if you listen, it's very difficult to call this a vocal. Like it just sounds like a pad, really. And so got that first more of a pad thing going on. And then this is what the second one sounded like. Kind of just got like an ambient shot going on right here, and then this one's more of like a distinct vocal. Just to add some ambience, just to add something else going on in the mix. So that's why I added those two vocals in. And then something big point to stress right here too is that if you look at all my mixer effects, any VST I used, I barely put effects on them. Like VST, literally just EQ, VST, just EQ, VST, just EQ, VST that I didn't end up using. I had one effect jack. And that's because I didn't realize people didn't do this, but go into your VST and tweak the settings there. Like a fundamental part of my understanding of sound design, I'm not going to talk like I learned this in a school or nothing, like I didn't, but like it just makes sense to me. If you're going to like alter a sound, start from the source and then work down. Don't try to start with a sound that's already been ran through effects and try to alter that and remove the effects when you can literally just turn them off. Like, does that make sense to y'all? Like, I see so many producers that don't do that. Like, I didn't know that was a thing, but I've worked with producers who don't do that, and I'm like, what the fuck? Just literally start with the VST, and by the time you get around to doing all this shit, like, you won't have to. There's creative effects you're gonna want to add, like, for sure. Like I'm not bashing adding effects here. Like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying you can eliminate a lot of this process and have a cleaner sound if you just mix within your VST before you come down to here. And that's why you see me only adding like little high cuts and low cuts, just because I get my sound sounding good as it leaves the VST. But after that, so I did that for all the VSTs, by the way. That wasn't just an arcade thing, but I did that the same shit with Analog Lab. But after that, it was pretty much the entirety of the beat. I just wanted one more thing for the hook to add like a little bit more melody. And so I played in the exact same chords using this JU06A. It's just a little mini boutique synth over here that I got. So I just played in the same chords and layered them up with that. But after that, the beat was done. I just had to arrange it. And usually I just skip over my arrangement because I usually think I'm ass at it, I'm going to be honest. But I did some cool arrangement shit here that I'll walk y'all through. And so the first thing was the beat starts right away with me like the full hook, like everything's going. But I like the way the reverse drums lead into it, just abruptly stopping. So I did that to open the song. And then after that, wait a couple bars and I'm get back into it, and then I got the hook. I got the bass and then just the chords coming back in. So just to set the mood. So that loops, I let that play out, and then over here I put in that drum loop and I used the EQ just to low pass it in, like gradually let more of the highs back in, and until I eventually get to the hook whenever the EQ's gone. So that sounds like this right here. And then so that was my transition into the hook from that intro thing, and I use this riser thing, which I use on like every beat. This exact one. It's a little subtle thing to get to the hook. And so once I did that, it goes back to, like I said, pretty normal arrangement. Like I usually don't go too crazy on it. But one other cool thing I did right here was the second part of the verse. I reversed the entire drum pattern this time. Instead of just having this part being reversed, I reversed everything. And then I put the low pass filter back in and then added the drums in. So that way this time the normal drums, like the drums I did, cut through instead of the drum loop. And that way you just kind of have this ambient, tucked away, like reverse drum loop going on in the back, which I think sounds pretty cool. So just gives you like a different vibe going on right here. Like it just gives you kind of a whole different sounding experience on this beat, but keeping the rhythm, keeping the key, keeping everything consistent still. And then back in the hook. Yeah, but that's about it. Like, I'm not even gonna cut off and go do another outro for y'all. Like, I don't got much more to say. If y'all watch the video, I appreciate it. If y'all want more, let me know. If not, all good. Good to be back. I'll catch y'all maybe in the next one.